Hey guys, what's up? It's story time. Quite literally, it's story time. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I am excited to chat with you about how storytelling benefits and impacts learning. Before we get into that, I do have to let you know that when I started researching for this presentation, I was kind of taken back into my younger years, in which I promise you that I hated, for lack of better words, I hated opportunities like this. I don't know why I dislike them, but for some reason, I always just felt like being forced to learn something took away from my time. And I just recently had a birthday, so maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I don't care, or maybe because I'm getting older and I'm getting wiser. But I think that it is absolutely amazing that we get an opportunity to take the time to master our craft. Now, if you are here with me today, I am making the assumption that you are a teacher, an educator, a coach, a guide, and you're looking for some way to help your people retain information. And if that is you, I want to let you know or remind you, if you already know, that you have an incredible superpower. It is absolutely amazing that a person can have so much influence on another person. You are taking someone who is wanting to change their life, and you are giving them the information they need, you are guiding them, you are correcting them, and you are encouraging them. And it is making a better quality of life for that person, which they wouldn't be able to have without you. So, you, yes, you're pretty amazing. And in that amazingness, I think it is natural, or maybe we understand that we don't just stay amazing at what we do. We have to continue to hone our craft, and getting an opportunity to do the professional development thing gives us an opportunity to perfect our craft. So I'm excited today to chat with you about how storytelling can impact our learners, and also I'm hoping it will reignite how you are using storytelling in the classroom. We should probably just dive right in, right? And for me, I always love to start my diving in with definitions. So, storytelling. What is the definition of storytelling? And I'm just gonna whip out my fancy phone here. I have to tell you, I think that the reason that I have to start with definitions is because I was forced to find definitions as a child. Like, I just don't understand like why I would not know the meaning to a word, and then my dad would tell me to go look it up. And I would just get angry about it. Like, and so then one day I thought, oh, I'm getting smart, right? Like, what if I don't know how to spell it? And his response to that was, sound it out. Well, sir, this is for you. I don't have to sound anything out anymore. I don't have to go paging through the dictionary anymore. I can be more efficient in my quest for definitions. So, on behalf of Google, let's see what we got. What is the definition of storytelling?
Here's the definition of storytelling: the activity of telling or writing stories.
So, with that being the definition, I think my dad would laugh at me right now. That's what he would do, because we all know that that's not a real definition. And when I was given that definition, I'm sure you're probably thinking the same thing. Like, there has to be more to storytelling than the activity of telling or writing a story. I kept digging. Yeah, I kept digging for more information. It's funny, as I was digging, I thought, I don't feel like I actually really need to be looking for a definition here. I think that it's obvious what storytelling is. In fact, if I were to just take a pause here and ask you what you and what your definition of storytelling is, I am confident The one, you would give me a better definition than what Google just gave me, but two, that you would give me a sound definition. The more I kept researching, just trying to figure out what storytelling is, I kind of started to take a few steps back because I wondered if we shouldn't be talking about what storytelling is, but how to best tell a story. But then I came across a definition that was a little bit better. Storytelling, according to the basic definition, is the vivid description of ideas, beliefs, personal experiences, and life lessons through stories or narratives that evoke powerful emotions and insight. And finally, I took a breath and I was like, okay, we're back in it. We're back in it because the definition that I just got a few seconds ago was crazy, and maybe we shouldn't be talking about storytelling. Maybe it's too basic. I guess I will take the time and ask you again, question, hey, do you think storytelling benefits learners with not even a ton of fanciness in there? The answer is yes. Of course it does. Of course storytelling benefits learners, but the more and more and more and more and more I researched, I found what I thought was the outline of how we can dig deeper into storytelling to where it's not just the yes, but it's how to do storytelling, when to put storytelling in, how it benefits the person listening to the story. There is an absolute explosion of information that is available that helps us figure out how to best implement storytelling. But I got to start with this. Did you know if you were to just walk into a classroom or gather a whole bunch of people, toss them in a room, whichever one, the statistics say that most people in your classroom are going to be visual learners. And if you don't grasp most people with the visual learners, it's okay, because the other most people, they're going to be auditory learners. So to break it down stats wise, 40% of people in a classroom setting we're looking at are visual learners. The other 40% of people in your classroom in that setting is going to be auditory learners. Now, I know you know, because you're smart, 40 plus 40 is not 100. So we got 20%, we got a small percentage left. And that small percentage are kinesthetic learners or are hands-on learners. Now, I could go down another loophole about why the public education system is failing our kinesthetic learners. I won't do that today. The cool thing about this information is that when we pair storytelling and all of those learners, all of the learners benefit from a good story. Every single one of them. And the kinesthetic learners, they are able to, one, emotionally attach themselves to the details of the story. And on top of that, they're able to visualize themselves walking with you through the details of the story. So if you can put a really good story together, boom, you're in. Okay, you have got the attention of the whole room, and you were able to help them retain information because they're not necessarily grasping for the information, they're grasping for the story. And the story is easily remembered. Now, how to place the story, how to strategically place the story is the next most important part of this whole setup. Before we get to that, there are some things that you need to know about what you need to include as you are looking at adapting, including stories into your lessons, into your class settings. The first thing is we got to stay focused. We got to stay on topic. The second thing is we got to be careful with humor, which I was surprised by, but we'll come back to why in a few seconds. We got to be careful with it. The third thing here, that is not a typo. Let's stay focused and let's stay on topic, which I think some people have a hard time with. The fourth thing, be careful with personal info, which I think is important as well. And then, yeah, not a typo. Stay focused, stay on topic, and be culturally and age appropriate. So let's bounce backwards to the first thing here. Stay focused, stay on topic. I'm not actually going to have a conversation with you about that because hopefully you understand and know why you should do that often. And if you are not staying on target, if you are not staying on topic, you are going to lose your audience. You're going to lose them. So just stay focused, keep it together, and stay on topic. Be careful with humor. This one is so important because no one likes to be the butt of the joke. And if everyone is laughing and you don't know what everyone is laughing at, also you feel left out. Now, this is the crazy thing because if you can place humor correctly, you will knock the socks off of every person that you meet. They will love you. They will adore you because who doesn't like to laugh? We all like laughing. We all like joking. But in the instance of telling stories, make sure that you understand the demographics of the room and make sure that you are telling your stories, your humorous stories, with caution. One way to always get it right, you can never fail, is if you're gonna make a joke about somebody, make a joke about yourself. People, again, will love you and adore you and want to know like how you have so much confidence that you could put yourself out there like that and make jokes about yourself like that. If you can do that and wrap it into a story that is relevant, that is the best way to infuse humor. I was thinking about whether or not I do this correctly, and I unfortunately think that I probably make fun of people from time to time. I shouldn't do it, but I do. Okay, I'm just being honest. But if I think about big picture, I don't really like being made fun of. Now, if I've done something funny, yes, but if I'm the butt of the joke, like I'm not here for it. I just don't do well in those circumstances. So knowing that and knowing that I'm like that, I also believe that most people are like that. And if you single them out, they're not going to feel good. And once you start singling people out and making people not feel good, then I don't know, you lose the attention and the respect of those who are in the classroom. So be careful when using humor. If you're good at it, use it. If you're making someone else the butt of your jokes, be cautious. The next thing that I want to chat about is being careful with personal info. And your stories are supposed to help your students, your clients, your people retain information, and you don't necessarily have to give them all the ins and outs of your life. In fact, you don't have to tell personal stories if you don't want to. So when we're talking about storytelling, like don't get it twisted. I did for a while. Stories, like I don't have that many stories to tell, but it doesn't have to be personal information. It can be the stories of others. You can omit and edit stuff from your stories when necessary. So be careful with sharing that personal info. And the last one, and probably where we should have started, is be culturally and age appropriate. Now, I was going to skip over this one because I read it once and then I was like, duh. And then I read it again and then I was like, duh. And I did some, decent research on this topic just to make sure that I had a good balance on everything. And almost everything that I read mentioned this to make sure that we are culturally and age appropriate. And it's very similar to the being cautious with how we're sharing humor. You never know what your audience is like. You never know what your audience has gone through. And so making an assumption with your story and how you're telling it without Panning your demographics, understanding your students can also put you in a position to lose the respect of some of your students. Making sure that you know the socioeconomics of your students, it's just really important that we understand that we're all different people. I am under the impression that most of us are just trying to do good. We're just all trying to do our best. And I am also under the impression and knowledge that my life, the way that I grew up, is way different than how a lot of people grew up. Recently, we did a book club and I got a chance to choose the book. And by got a chance to choose the book, I just chose the book. And the choosing of the book was UOU by Dr. Eric Thomas. And I knew when I chose the book that I could be walking into a whole realm of, I don't know, because the demographic of the author was vastly different than the demographic of the audience of the book club. And even in that knowledge, I thought, I still think it's important to get different insights. I still think it's important to have these conversations. And I do think it's important to have the conversations. But I also know that people take themselves very seriously. And if you're not careful, if you're not cautious, they will think that you are personally attacking them. And so one thing that was prompted in a discussion was just making sure that you leave your classroom, your setting open for interactive dialogue without consequences, maybe without reprimand. I'm not sure quite what word I'm going for here, but hopefully you can understand that you have to set up the class session so everyone knows that all of our opinions are important, all of our demographics are different, that we care about everyone, and if somebody's feeling some sort of way, that they should bring that information to the table so that we can have a conversation about it and not make the assumption that we're trying to cast you out somewhere. So as much as I didn't want to touch on the topic, which I love talking about, but I do see how this topic can be very tricky. And so again, let's just be cautious. Now we can rewind because where we started off was, how do we know the best time to tell a story? And I think that you probably know the answer to this question. And in a class setting, this is so good. We're talking about retaining information. So in a class setting, if you really, really want to drive home a specific point, that's the perfect time to tell a really, really great story. Or maybe you just need to lighten the mood. Maybe summer break is around the corner and everyone is just out of their mind and trying to just, skip over the learning so that we can get to the summer break part. Who knows? And maybe you just need to lighten the mood. Maybe you want to illustrate something by using historical stories or autobiographies or biographies or fictional stories. There's lots of different types of stories. This is the perfect time to take those stories and implement them or put them into our repertoire, because in reality, everything is not story tellable, which I know is not a word, but it is today. Everything is not story tellable. So with that knowledge, with that understanding, if everything is not story tellable, then we really have to be specific when we tell stories. But this right here is the perfect time to tell a story. Have you ever had a whole conversation with somebody and you tell them everything, you've given them all the guidance, you tried to help them out, you answered all their questions, and they're still looking at you like, or hypothetically, you have given these people all the information, everything they need to know, and they go to take a test and they get everything wrong. Well, then based on your research of your classroom and your students and the people that you are dealing with, this is the perfect time to tell a story. If your students, if your people are having a hard time retaining information, well, if you come up with some crazy story about an elephant floating through a carnival picking up prescriptions for some ailment, I am confident that your students who might deal with test anxiety, most people say that they have this as a life issue, which I don't know, I think that's just lacking confidence, but who am I? If you can give them something that grasps onto, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that story about the elephant flying through the carnival, picking up the certain prescription. That's because our brain is able to recognize and remember the details of something that's so vivid. So take the time to go through, figure out where your students are lacking, figure out where your students are struggling, or your people, depending on what your setting is, and strategically craft your stories for those moments. As we are retaining information, I just want to make sure that it is very well understood that stories have and can have a huge impact. In that impactfulness, we need to make sure we keep our stories short and sweet and focused. And I know I said this already. I want you to think about the generation that you're currently dealing with. I want you to think about yourself and think about your attention span and whether or not you can stretch out your attention span to last the length of the story that you're telling. I was overhearing someone in a podcast that I was listening to, and I had also heard this from the author that I'm going to recommend to you in a second. But the podcast guy, I can't remember his name, but he was saying that they did us a disservice back when we were children. Remember when you used to have to write stories and they would be like, oh yeah, I need you to tell me an outline of what happened in this story and you have to use 1,000 words. And this guy was saying, I don't understand why they want us to use so many words. Nobody wants to listen or read all those words. What they should have done is said, hey, give us the information, the outline, and the most succinct, small package, but thorough that you can give me. And that would have given us a better leg up in life versus let's just see how many circles we can talk in. And same with the author that I want to kind of just shout out, I guess, as we're going through this. He mentioned, hey, like, what if there were 2 plays and both of these plays are like amazing plays. They're wonderful. They get all kinds of great reviews. And one of the plays is 2 hours and the other play is 5.5 hours. They're both great. They're both worthy. They both cost the same amount of money. Like, which play are you going to see? And obviously, like, we all go see the 2-hour play. Even with movies, like if you were to go see a really good movie, like I'm not sitting in the movie theater for 5 hours. So the importance of keeping it short and sweet and to the point is really crucial. Even with our generation, we have these things called phones now and all the social media available to us. And it forces our brains to go quickly through information. And once we get bored with something, we go to the next thing as fast as possible. So knowing that about your audience or your potential audience, knowing that they've probably been primed by Facebook Reels and TikTok and Instagram, and they're just scrolling all day long. When it comes to the stories, we're going to keep them short, impactful, and sweet. Speaking of impactful stories, as I was going down the rabbit hole, I told you this way earlier that how to tell the stories became very prevalent to me, that it was very important that the how of a good story can impact whether or not your students, your people are going to retain the information or whether or not you're just talking to talk. And so Matthew Dix wrote a book called Story Worthy. I also have watched several of his stories that he's told through competitions. He has been interviewed a million times over and has given great advice about how to be a great storyteller. And so if you're really trying to hone in on this craft, I would recommend taking a look at this book. It's a good one. Most important, I already told you how amazing you are. Remember, at the beginning of the presentation, I told you that you have an amazing superpower. You are able to guide someone to the desires of their hearts and dreams and make a real impact in other people's lives. You should probably walk into every room screaming, "I am the most important person here." Because you are. You are the difference maker. You are the guide. You are the teacher. You are the coach. You are the most important person in the room. Until your students walk in the room. And I'm not asking you to shift the level of importance to anyone else. I'm not asking you to do that. You keep that level of importance. You have earned it. But what I am saying is that if you were to ask your students, your clients, your people, who the most important people in the room were, I promise you that they're not going to say you. And being the amazing person that I know you are, I know that you wouldn't want them to. Because as that person in your room, in your presence, they have a commitment to themselves to better their lives, to further themselves, to better their families' lives. And in that second, in that room, they become the most important person in the room. Knowing that you are the most important person in the room and that they are the most important person in the room should impact how you tell your stories. And all your stories should not be about you. In fact, if you know that one person that all they do is tell stories about themselves, oh my gosh, I don't know why a person would tell so many stories about themselves and think that other people want to listen to them. They don't. You find you self-centered. Keep your personal stories, keep the stories about you to a minimum. The one thing that we're really trying to do in our classroom is to encourage engagement and conversation. I know that you have asked a question before or said, "Does anybody have any questions?" And it's crickets. No one says anything. No one does anything. The cool thing about a story is that you can solicit someone else's story and that you can ask questions from that story and that your mind will start to morph itself and wrap itself around all the details, and your brain will want to know why and where and how and if the person in the story was successful. So use the stories that you have to help others see that they can be successful. And solicit the stories of those in your presence to show that you're a worthy listener. And ask questions and get people to ask questions. Because the cool thing about a story is you get to write the ending. And the ending can change depending on who the storyteller is. And on that note, I have enjoyed hanging out with you today. I hope that you will be and feel inspired to craft your storytelling and that you will continue to appreciate the power of a good story. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.